All right. So this is some of the reason why people are speaking out. But another theme that emerged, right? And this one is unsurprising. The theme is that self-identification causes problems and allows sexual predators under laws that give them the right to say I'm a woman and access women's spaces to abuse those loopholes. And well, the
Well, a lot
Orlando
of
guy.
people have been saying, and not just that, a lot of people point out that trans rights are human rights, that what that really means is trans rights are special privileges. And when you
Uh-huh.
allow people to have special privileges under the law, some people are going to take advantage of that, especially if you can self-ID into those
100%.
special privileges categories. And I think this theme of, what did we originally call it? I think it was peepers.
Flashers and
I can't
perverts.
remember. Yeah, something equally like that. Kind of shows that pattern of individuals who see an opportunity to cheat, because this is what they're doing. They're cheating, and benefit themselves for doing so. Yeah, so there's been quite a few of those stories this year.
What's the one that got you?
Well, the one that got me the most for some reason was this this Edmonton offender. I can't remember, Weskahat, I think their name is. They're at the bottom right corner here.
Yeah.
And I think it was egregious in particular for me, not just because it was recent, but it was this particular individual who didn't identify as being trans previously, had a long history of child abuse, being in possession of child abuse material, egregious stuff of toddler-age children, was known to the police, had been apprehended and decided to change their gender identity to female. The Edmonton police knew that they were going to release them into the public sphere, put out a letter saying, this person's going out into the community. They're a danger to the community, by the way, warning, warning. They're likely to offend in this way, and then just released them. And lo and behold, a few days later, the person had been a danger to the community. They had, I think, a crib or a pushchair in their possession. They had child abuse material in their possession. They did exactly what the police said that they were that they were likely to do. So for me, that was probably the most egregious this year, because it was like the police know that they're going to offend again, and the victims of this person's crimes are babies and very small children. So
Yeah.
I'm still shocked by this particular story. I think they're in custody again at the minute. So yeah, it's an ongoing story.
He was picked up again. I mean, there's a couple layers to this. One is we don't have, for viewers who don't realize this, perhaps, we don't have equal justice before the law in Canada anymore. We have intersectional race politics that are inserting themselves in bail hearings, and in conviction, and in sentencing. So based on historic injustice and oppression and where you are on the intersectional matrix, and what I mean by that is if you have an intersection of various protected categories, in the case of this Weskahat guy from Edmonton, a trans woman is basically the most marginal of identities that there is. So marginalized that they really didn't exist before about 50 years ago in any kind of meaningful public way, and also indigenous. And so you add in there, some crying about, I was an abused child, and the court system basically has to grant bail. They have to give more lenient sentences based on the weight of these intersectional categories. And it's giving even more loopholes. So this is probably one of the reasons why this guy decides to identify this way, because it's going to get him a lighter sentence. This Redux article that Eva Krylova wrote was about the guy in Nanaimo in January who was peeping in the Nanaimo Aquatic Center change rooms. Mama Bear escorted this guy out of the change room, and the police were threatening to charge her with assault, and they refused to do anything about this guy who was very obviously peeping on girls, young girls. And as it turns out, he's a convicted sex offender. So he's just changed his name. He's using a trans identity as a way to protect himself and to insinuate himself into spaces where he might have access to young girls. And it's really quite frightening. We've got another, like, for some reason, Nanaimo and Vancouver Island seems to be a hotbed for this. Parksville is about 15 minutes north. We've got Bridget, who made the news for crying about not being allowed into women's change room at a private female only gym, and that his human rights were being violated by not being allowed to go into those change rooms. And another kind of the same week in Saskatoon, and this was defended by municipal councillors who are saying this is the new normal. You just got to get used to it. The Shaw Centre, that is the Shaw Communications, a large Canadian telecom company, sponsors the name logo on this building, and these things are going on where in the Saskatoon case, an exhibitionist parading around naked. Again, we're talking about girls between 8 and 13 years old getting ready for swim class, and he's hanging out the twig and berries, and these, for some reason, we have allowed this trans legislation to make us overlook obvious predatory and antisocial behavior by these kinds of people.
Talking about this, I feel like my instinct is always to have a caveat saying, obviously, we don't mean all people who identify as trans are predators. But the point is that when you create laws like this, when you create these loopholes, then the people who are predators to begin with are going to be drawn to that get out of jail free card and that privilege point that they can get from those identities. And so it's curious to me that those who support this seem to be blind to this. They seem not to be able to make that distinction or to dot the I's and cross the T's in this area. Thank you so much for watching. It's been an eye-opening year for sure. Click on one of these suggestions for some other stories in the gender landscape in Canada. Hope you like them.